NATO has now formally blamed sabotage for the damage to the Nord Stream pipeline near Bornholm, Denmark. Sweden has said they detected a fourth leak from the pipeline. And European security officials are now reporting Russian vessels were seen in the area. It's all lining up so perfectly. And I just can't understand why Vladimir Putin would blow up his own gas line and his only leverage on and have it be announced, basically, the damage to be discovered the day a new pipeline is launched, the Baltic Pipe. I'm wondering if we're witnessing World War III's Reichstag fire. As legend goes, I've read a bit into it. It's a bit apocryphal. We don't know for sure, but it is widely believed that the burning of the Reichstag was a false flag attack to justify war. Maybe not. It depends on what you read. Could we be looking at something like that now? The only thing here is, if it is like a Reichstag, I suppose that would mean Russia did do it to blame the West and then say, look, they're attacking us. Look, they're launching a pipeline. It all makes sense. I don't know. I don't believe it. I don't think Russia would sacrifice some of its strongest points of leverage at a time when the Baltic pipeline coming from the West would be opening up in basically the same region. In which case, the question is, does this have more to do with the Baltops U.S. naval fleet being off the island of Bornholm in June? Maybe. I suppose you'd have to believe then that they planted bombs on the pipeline and those bombs went undetected, which could be, makes sense, for several months before they were finally detonated. This is war, baby. You don't know what people are capable of doing. Some people can only imagine. Let me tell you how easy it would be. Maybe there really was a Russian fleet passing through. And what they did, let's just say Western forces, the U.S. Navy, planted fake bombs on these pipelines, hard to detect. And then they sat and wait. And they said the moment a Russian fleet passes through this area, we detonate and then we blame Russia. Maybe. It's a bit conspiratorial, right? The Navy was there. What would Russia have to gain from destroying its own leverage? Unless, knowing that Joe Biden said they'd end the Nord Stream pipeline, knowing that the U.S. Navy was in the area doing exercises, Russia did send some special ops to special agents or whatever, forces, his frogmen, they call it, to blow up the pipeline. I don't know. Whoever you want to point the finger at, it really does look like World War III. That's what the Pope said. The Pope said we're living through World War III. And if you didn't believe it before, you best believe it now. Maybe this all stops. Maybe Russia backs off. I doubt it. We're now hearing officially that Russia will annex. Humiliated Putin, Daily Mail says, will annex occupied Ukrainian regions in major speech tomorrow as his troops face imminent defeat in key town amid rampaging Kiev counterattack. They're not going to stop. Vladimir Putin has nukes. He's not going to lose. He will not stop. And with the annexation of these regions, you call it occupation, whatever you want, he's basically asserting that they will do everything in their power to defend it as if it is Russia. Because he's basically saying it is. Here's what y'all need to understand. The Nord Stream pipeline damage has just turned this into World War III officially. Now, but maybe not. Well, hear me out. Some people are saying, no, it won't get that far. Well, the Pope is saying it is, as I mentioned. When you had a regional conflict with Ukraine and Russia, some people say, well, it can remain isolated to that region. You could argue that the NATO forces supplying the Ukrainians with weapons and training are not involved. And look, it's Ukrainians and volunteers that are fighting back the fascism of Vladimir Putin. But what happens now when NATO says the Nord Stream pipeline was sabotaged formally, as they just did? The Wall Street Journal reports. This is basically a statement coming out right now, this morning, that Western NATO nations and their resources have been attacked. It could be a grain of sand in the heap. I hope that this is nothing. Just a blip in history. A skirmish broke out in Eastern Europe. Pipeline was bombed. Everybody said, whoa, this is going too far for us, man. Y'all need to chill out. Maybe. But I have a sinking feeling that with NATO declaring that this was sabotage, with European security officials observing Russian Navy ships in the vicinity of Nord Stream. This will be the, how do you pronounce it, casus belli, that NATO is looking for to formally declare war on Russia. Dark days indeed, so they say. I could be pronouncing it wrong, but I think it's casus belli. Is that how you pronounce it? Or I don't know. Maybe I'm getting it totally wrong, but it's a reference to a justification for war. And we have it. NATO has it. Count the days. Russian naval vessels seen in the area. The pipeline sabotage. It was sabotage. How much longer until NATO says Russia did this? We are at war. They attacked us. It won't matter what you think. You will say, I don't want war. I don't care. I don't want to be involved. We should be wasting money on this. It won't matter. Because these people are psychopathic warmongers. And you know what? So is Vladimir Putin. Now, I think it's fair to say that NATO's been expanding rapidly through Europe, into Eastern Europe, and that surely has pissed off Vladimir Putin. Nobody's innocent in this. But what worries me right now is we don't know who actually hit the Nord Stream. Think about it this way. What if it really was Russia? What if Russia actually hit the Nord Stream pipelines and is trying to blame the West for it? Should we do nothing? I can't stand war. I have no idea. The Wall Street Journal reports NATO said that a series of leaks in the Nord Stream pipelines between Russia and Europe were the result of acts of sabotage, and that attacks on its members' infrastructure would be met with a collective response from the military alliance. It is there staring us in the face. Man, I'm waking up to be so pissed off. Here we go, baby. World War III right in front of your eyes. It will be met with a collective response from NATO. NATO outright saying, it was sabotage, and we will collectively respond. Conveniently, CNN, they run their John Brennan guest interview, ex-CIA director. This is from this morning at 2 a.m. Updated. European security officials observed Russian Navy ships in the vicinity of Nord Stream pipeline leaks. It's on. There's no way back from this. I hope that this fizzles out. You know, when I talk about the risks of civil war, conflict, or World War III, people say, it's never going to happen. It can't happen. These things don't happen. How do you walk back from this? NATO has said we were attacked, and we will collectively respond. And separately, security officials in Europe say it was Russia in the area. Give it a few more days until they say what? Evidence points to Vladimir Putin and Russia. And they've already made the argument. They said that the reason Putin did it was to terrify Europe, to terrorize them into fearing a dark winter. Psychotic BS. Let me see what we got here. From DW.com. Here we have leaks discovered in Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines. You can see the pipelines go forward and then loop around Bornholm. Yeah, Bornholm. That's where the U.S. Navy 6th Fleet, partnered with the U.S. Navy Research, was off the coast of Bornholm, Denmark, was doing experimentation. Mine warfare readiness. Now, this is in June. You want to argue that Russian forces were seen in the area? Whatever. But take a look at this. Let me tell you why I think it is more likely to have been Western sabotage than Russian sabotage. First, you have the obvious. Russia, kind of far away. I mean, Poland is literally right here where the leaks are. You can see Bornholm. You can see the Nord Stream pipelines. These are where the leaks are. Substantially closer to Poland, Germany, Sweden, Denmark. I mean, it is Denmark. Now, you do have Kaliningrad right here. Kaliningrad is a Russian oblast, which is separated by Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and arguably, I guess you could say Belarus. And then Poland to the south. This is Russian-controlled territory, basically a Russian state. It's entirely possible they dispatched their frogmen and hit the pipeline. Why in this area? I don't know. Why wouldn't Russia hit it closer to Estonia and then blame Estonia and say, why would we damage our own pipeline? Why have it near Bornholm? I don't know. But I can tell you this. The Baltic pipe coming from the west, going into Poland it's very, very close to the end point of the Nord Stream pipelines. So you mean to tell me that on the same day that these pipelines faced sabotage, because now they're saying officially it was sabotage, the Baltic pipe was announced completed and opened? Why would Vladimir Putin take away his only competition, his only leverage? I don't know, man. Maybe because it's all one big conspiracy and he knew that no one would believe he did it. It was all set up so that we would be confused and think it's more likely the U.S. Perhaps. I just don't know. The one thing I can say definitively is that they are saying there will be a response from NATO. NATO is now being dragged in formally into this conflict. It is extending beyond just the regional conflict of Ukraine. NATO is now involved. Quote, NATO is committed to deter and defend against hybrid attacks. Any deliberate attack against allies' critical infrastructure will be met with a united and determined response. The North Atlantic Council, which consists of representatives of all 30 NATO governments, didn't name a culprit behind the Baltic Sea leaks, though officials in several alliance member states have already attributed the destruction to Russia without providing evidence. Spain, baby. Here we go. From 7 a.m., Spain says Nord Stream gas leaks likely a deliberate act and points the finger at Russia. You know, I shouted out because of the hurricane, the emergency food the other day. Safeandreadymeals.com. I'm not going to pull it up. I'm not going to do an extended promo. I just want to make the point. If there ever was something to shock you into preparing, I hope this is it. I'm thinking long and hard about what this means. I cannot overstate the threat that we face right now with NATO basically publicly saying this is what we are going to do, war. A collective response. What do you think Vladimir Putin's saying right now? Do you think in any capacity, let's say this, there's two scenarios. I mean, there's more than that, but let's say there's two scenarios. Vladimir Putin did this, false flag attack. He needed to rally support because right now he's conscripting old people. Not a lot of people want to go fight in a war. It happens. Vladimir Putin sabotages this. What do you think he's thinking now? If he really did sabotage this, then he knew this would be the outcome. And for NATO to then respond saying we will collectively, there will be a collective response. He knows war with NATO is coming. In fact, Russian personalities have already stated in the past several months, this is not war with Ukraine. It is war with NATO. That's a good reason to suggest Putin did this, because his view is they're already attacking us. Let's say there's another scenario. Vladimir Putin did not bomb this, and it was the U.S. or Western intelligence or Western forces that engaged in this false flag sabotage. Vladimir Putin, now sitting in Moscow or wherever he may be in a bunker, says, here we go. NATO is formally entering the fray. When do the nukes drop? Vladimir Putin, Russia, they have nukes. They can use them. In fact, I believe they have the most powerful nuclear weapons on the planet with what NATO calls the Satan II missile. I believe it's a 50 megaton bomb. I don't know if Putin would actually use it against any major cities. Although I believe Russian pundits have already said they should nuke London. Send a message. Here's a quote. It was a deliberate act, in my opinion. It can very likely be linked to the push for constant provocation by the Kremlin. I just don't understand why. We can come up with many reasons. Here we are. From the Wall Street Journal. Putin to sign decree annexing Ukrainian regions on Friday. Moscow, failing to reverse Ukrainian gains on the battlefield, continues to target civilian infrastructure. It's going to get bad. The U.S. is referring to it as a sham referendum. Occupied parts of Ukraine vote on joining Russia in sham referendums. Do you know what's been happening? Take a look at this. From Newsweek. Third Russia-installed official killed in bombing in 2 weeks. 3 Russian officials installed in occupied Ukrainian cities have been killed in bombings. Russian President Putin launched the Ukraine invasion, blah, blah, blah. Several Kremlin-installed officials have been killed in attacks in recent weeks as Russian losses mount and Ukraine seeks to retake occupied territory. In the latest anti-Russian attack, a commandant, Artem Bardin, died after his car was blown up in the town of Berdyansk, inside the Zaporizhzhia region, according to Ukrainian news outlet Ukrainska Pravda. Ukrainska Pravda, is it? That's Pravda and doesn't ring well for us in the United States, I suppose. Was this guy installed? I'd have to say probably. But many people have argued that these eastern regions were basically Russia to begin with, that they're more ethnically Russian, and they've been fighting for, what are we going on, 8 years now? Were they installed, or are the people there supporting it? You're never going to know. Now, I don't trust the CIA. I don't trust the brass at the FBI. I do think that within the United States intelligence agencies, there are good people who joined to do the right things, but I think the leadership is corrupt. But I tell you this, as much as you probably don't like to hear it, I trust Joe Biden more than I trust Vladimir Putin. That's just the reality. I think you'd have to be insane to think that Vladimir Putin's going to tell you the truth. Putin's interests, but look, I'll tell you this. Biden and the intelligence agencies, Brennan, these people, their interests may not be aligned with you as someone who believes in America first, who wants strong borders, but at least your interests are aligned more than they would be with Vladimir Putin. I can give all the reasons why I despise these warmongering, psychopaths, but I don't think Vladimir Putin is some innocent party just defending his country. I think he's basically the same, but at the very least, he doesn't want what I want. So I'll tell you, the one thing I can count on is that Joe Biden actually has property in Delaware. He doesn't want the United States to fall, at least to that degree. I certainly think he's colluding with China. I think that Joe Biden flew his son out for private equity deals and he's looking to make money and extract value. But why would Joe Biden want to lose access to his net worth if the United States were to face serious detriment due to the war in Ukraine? The same goes for Europe. The only thing I can say is, well, the leaders of NATO may be particularly despicable and there may be many warmongers, as is the Russian government. I can tell you the one thing you have in common with them is that you don't want your assets devalued. Look, that's about it. So I can say I don't trust them for why they want to go to war, but I certainly am not going to believe Vladimir Putin and the Russian state. There's no easy answer in war. There's no easy out. Pick a side, but it's going to be bad either way. The lesser of two evils, I suppose. Or maybe there is something else. When Donald Trump was president, Vladimir Putin didn't invade Ukraine. We had peace. We had the Abraham Accords. Is it possible that under Trump, Putin actually was concerned the madman would fire a nuke? Was he less concerned about NATO expansion? Seemingly. He may have been less concerned about NATO expansion and worried about Trump, and that's a two-hitter. I'm not going to invade Ukraine, he says, because Trump doesn't want to expand in Europe, so I'm not super worried about it. Well, I think that's probably the big play right there. But at the same time, there is the other hit that Donald Trump, he could fire a nuke. Who knows what he's going to do? He's a madman, they say. I think the big issue for Putin was that Donald Trump was ending ISIS, ending the expansion, and saying this needs to stop. Where are we now? I mean, the Pope says we're in World War III. That's it. He says we're living in World War III. So that's it, I suppose, right? Now we're seeing what may be the Reichstag fire of our generation. 2022. Just about 100 years after World War I. 80 years after World War II. We are certainly facing the fourth turning, aren't we? I saw this video. Horrifying moment. Russian conscript asks friend to break his arm with a sledgehammer so he can avoid signing up to fight on Ukraine front line. Fake news. I think this is fake. I can't show the video because it's extremely graphic. You can see a man at the other end of the room with his back towards you, and you can see an arm on a bed. The arm looks a bit long. A sledgehammer comes down and the arm bounces straight up and down. The guy gets up and then you can't see anything. And then he turns. I wouldn't be surprised if he was holding or wearing some kind of armored prosthesis, because apparently in the video, the sledgehammer doesn't break the arm. I've seen an arm break. I've seen many breaks, skateboarding, car accidents. You can see the arm broken. So apparently in the video, they're saying, did it not break? Did the sledgehammer not work? Well, it may have been that he was on a bed, and so the sledgehammer hit his arm, and it pushes into the bed and then bounces it up and doesn't break it. But I'll tell you this. Videos like this, it's propaganda. The Daily Mail is already framing it. Look at this. When they say humiliated Putin, they're already giving you that framing. I don't know who's right and who's wrong. I think war is wrong. I don't know who is telling you the truth. I would be more interested in NATO and the West winning whatever conflict this is for the reasons I already described, though I don't like any of it. But these videos come out and they're meant to convince you that people are terrified that Russia will lose. They can't win. The point of this video in terms of propaganda is to make you believe that Vladimir Putin will be unable to muster a military force. People are so desperate to avoid fighting for Putin, they break their own arms. Maybe. Could be real. Or it could be propaganda. It's the fog of war, my friends, and I don't think we will know. We can only sit back and hope that this resolves peacefully and quickly and we don't get a nuclear apocalypse. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.